I'm going to talk about the story mode now. And please forgive me, we've entered the hater part. Well, not entirely. We've entered the semi-hater part of the podcast. Because it's not an entirely bad thing. So, I went and I watched some it's like the biggest fighting game streamer, man. His Maximilian Dude, the Dudus. Every time an NRS game comes out, he streams the whole story mode with his friends in like a big marathon thing where they all get together and play through it. And I've watched the last couple, and it's always a fun time when he just uploads them in chunks to his YouTube channel. And you know what? I was watching the first couple episodes, I guess you could call it, of the story mode of their stream. And I thought, I'm actually really engaged by this. I actually want to see where this goes. So I decided to just, after the third or maybe fourth video, I hopped over to just his Twitch channel and just watched the rest of the VOD. Just watched the rest of the story mode to see where it went. Okay, so I feel comfortable talking about the story mode of a game and being able to critique it when it's like this, because the NRS story modes, they're kind of just like, I don't think you really have to play them. They're basically movies that are occasionally interrupted by gameplay. Cutscenes are named such because they cut away from the gameplay, right? I would call NRS games movies with, like, cut gameplay. Because it cuts away from the movie that you're watching. I'm not going to say that me not having done the fights where you know who's going to win the fight because of it's always the character you're playing as. I'm not sure that, no one don't call me out on critiquing the story without playing it. You don't have to. Everyone knows that. I think like before the game even came out, there was like IGN just released the entire thing as one movie. It's like 5 or 6 hours long. It's something like that. So I watched it. I have some thoughts on it. I'm going to spoil the whole thing, so if you really care about it, you can skip forward ahead, where I'm going to talk about Follow That Bird. So like 50% of this story is I like it a lot. I actually enjoy a lot of things about it. Is it a little tiring that we're redoing the same characters again? Yeah, but it's helped a bit by the fact that things get a little mixed up, and they did that, of course, in MK9. But I have to say, okay, if we're going to mix it up again, we're going to remix the timeline. Because MK9 was trying much more, I feel like it was trying to do a much closer, we're redoing the original trilogy and all that, right? Like the NRS games so far have just kind of been rehashing the games with some slight alterations. MK1 feels like a bit more of like a wholesale remix until like a certain point where you realize what it's actually doing. So how do I even describe it? Okay. The story starts out, and for most of it, it is a very enjoyable, pretty well put together action-adventure fantasy movie. I think the character work is pretty solid. It's not the most incredible stuff in the world, It's not the craziest, most innovative. I feel like I'm describing Titanfall 2 again. Not the most innovative story. It's not going to blow anyone's socks off. But hey, NRS likes to be like the Marvel movies, and they do a pretty decent job at it, at least in this game. There's a pretty strong emotional core. I would say the heart of the story is the four real main characters of the game. It's Johnny Cage, Kenshi, Raiden, and Kung Lao. Those are the 4 characters who are very clearly meant to be the audience perspective. Of course, everyone is familiar with the Mortal Kombat stuff and the Outworld and all these crazy characters, but this is like a new version of the world, and these are the characters specifically being brought from Earth who don't know anything about all this magical fantasy nonsense, and we are seeing a story like is being introduced to them as it is being introduced to us, right? They are the insert, so to speak. And there's some pretty well done, just, character concepts. Raiden is this humble, small town farmhand. He's a little nervous to accept the responsibility of being Earth's champion, but he has the potential, right? And Kung Lao is the more hot-headed, kind of a dick, but in I don't know, sort of an enjoyable way. Very quick to think and quick to feel sort of character who sort of balances Raiden's more kind of meek personality out. And then the other dynamic really in that group is Johnny and Kenshi. And I like the idea that Kenshi's trying to get his sword back and Johnny bought it because he's an egotistical kind of douchebag. He's sort of washed up. He's trying to get his career back on track. They reveal his name in this movie. In this game, they reveal that his name isn't actually Johnny Cage. His name is fucking Carlton. It's John Carlton. Can you believe that? That's really funny. And Johnny Cage is his stage name. So Kenshi is like, you can see the story arcs with all these characters. Maybe not Kenshi as much, but Kenshi's more like, I would say Kenshi's already kind of figured things out for the most part in the story, and he's more of like a flat character, where other characters change around him or because of him. Namely Johnny. And there's some really good stuff in there, I like the introduction that we get to the world. It spins a little too. There's a couple pacing issues. The whole intro to Johnny's character segment where they're doing the Indiana Jones ripoff, that goes on way too long. That's like 10 minutes. It's weirdly drawn out for a bit that I called within the first 10 seconds. Oh my god, then the director's gonna yell cuts. Can you believe that? We totally had you right there. I like, Johnny is this guy who is going to be... Wait, what the fuck was I talking about? Yeah, the introductions of the characters, the introduction to the world, we're getting eased into it. We're having characters sort of just, we're passing by, and Liu Kang, who's the mentor, and he plays a pretty good mentor role now. Feels like the character has matured from where he was before. And that's kind of satisfying. You can see how he started out in MK9 to now becoming this character, and it's kind of cool. He'll be explaining something to them, providing a little bit of kind of built-in exposition where, okay, they want to know something, he'll tell them it. It's fine. The introductions of all the characters and all these funky outworlders and their magical ways. I guess there's like a small gripe with the way the tournament is handled. It's really short, and I feel like there should have been a little more dedicated to it. You know what I find weird? It's weird that it's a solo tournament. I feel like they had the opportunity, now that it's a new timeline, I feel like it should have been a tag tournament. I feel like that should have been the idea. That, because, you have the cameo system, have like the tournament in the story be based around two people working together, and then you could do like, it's because it's strange that Raiden is the only one who actually fights. None of the other characters actually fight. I don't know. The tournament feels very rushed, and I kind of wish there was a little more time spent. You could use that to build some of the characters up, right? I think you could... there's some stuff you could have chopped off of this game, and I think you could have reassembled... You could have regrafted that into the tournament. I think it would have been fun. I'm just armchair critiquing and saying I could have done it better because I'm a piece of shit. I think it would have been fun if you did like, have Raiden and Kung Lao be a duo, and maybe they have to switch out. You can extend some of the fights with like, a little more time with, let's say, Kitana and Tanya fight together. And then you switch them out. Tanya, then Kitana for like round 2 or something later that day. And then, you go from like Raiden and Kung Lao cameo to the opposite. Do the same with Shao and Reiko. Then you do, I don't know, work Rain in there at some point. Rain does very little besides get beat up in the story. I thought it was weird that you never fought Rain in the tournament. And then use that to like, then you have Raiden and Kung Lao and then Kenshi and Johnny, and have that push those characters to kind of like the limits of their friendship. I really liked Kenshi and Johnny's relationship in this game. I liked how they were constantly butting heads. They had a very practical, in-universe reason to not like each other. And I really enjoyed the way that it developed, When... It's so funny because, obviously Kenshi has his sight, and that at some point in the game he's going to lose it. But the fact that when there's that whole scene where he actually gets his eyes gouged out by Melina, it's really sudden. I won't lie. I was really taken aback by that. That drew a gasp from me. I actually felt for that. And then that whole segment following where he's just kind of dealing with the immediate trauma, physical and mental and emotional, of losing his eyesight, and he's like at his lowest point. And then that's when Johnny kind of starts, like, he feels awkward. Like, he's been just shitting on him and negging him the whole game. And then now it's kind of weird. Like, he wants to be nice to him. He wants to lighten up. And then he gives him the sword. He's like letting him... Well, first he lets him like, lean on me for support. And it's like, when he gives him the sword, it's like, there's a little bit of mutual respect and camaraderie between these characters where there wasn't before. That's fun. I actually really enjoyed that. Again, nothing super innovative, but pretty well executed. It helps that the performances are really good. And the dialogue, for the most part, is pretty good. Johnny has too many movie quotes. Like, I get it, okay? He's the type of guy who quotes movies every now and again. But they really lean into it to the point where it feels kind of gimmicky and a little... it's a little annoying. Funny enough, the point where that happens is also the point where he stops quoting movies. That when Kenshi loses his eyesight. So that's that coincides with Johnny's growth as a character is like inversely correlated to his movie quotes per second. The MQPS. Yeah, and I mean, even having said that, with it being too much, the actor for Johnny really, he does his best to sell it. I have to give it up to him. He's doing the best he can with some kind of annoying dialogue, which I think makes it a lot more palatable. You know what? All that stuff, I like it a lot. Ever since I did that tier list video, I'm kind of Baraka pilled. I'm really into Baraka now. I think he's actually kind of a cool character. I was going back and just looking at him throughout time, and I'm like, I like Baraka. I'm kind of upset that he's been shafted historically throughout the series lore and gameplay-wise. He kind of tends to suck gameplay-wise. He gets some cool stuff in this game. He gets this whole moment where he's communicating with, they meet him, and he's actually, like, a respectable, noble guy. He isn't just snarling monster man. He has this kind of tragic backstory with his family dying to the Tarkat disease. When they meet Reptile later in Shang Tsung's, like, Flesh Pits prison, they have that, like, Reptile's a slave, and he thinks that Shang Tsung has his family captive. He's holding them prisoner, and he's just obeying his whims to protect his family. And Baraka, like, he apologizes for it, and Baraka's like, no, I would have done the same. for my family. And it's like, oh, Baraka. Big Baraka Obama. And then, when Shang Tsung reveals that he actually killed Reptile's family a long time ago, and Reptile's like furiously angry. Oh, okay, that's another nice emotional moment. I kind of felt that. That was good. And you sort of feel like, yeah, a lot of these characters, I like them. Once they start adding, like, Ashra into the mix, she's like, okay, I get Ashra's deal, but she's a little like, I'm showing up and expositing what my character's deal is. And she doesn't really do that much in terms of the plot. She's sort of there. I think they kind of struggled to work her in cleanly. All that's nice. I was like, man, I'm actually quite enjoying this. They resurrect... Well, they don't really resurrect. They form Ermac. They form Ermac out of all the souls in the living forest, which is a neat idea. Was that what he was before? Dude, what the fuck? Is something burning outside? I smell it with my sniffer. Is someone burning some... I'm going to go check the kitchen really quick to make sure an elder isn't going to burn the house down. No, I am safe from the elderly terrorists in my home. All that stuff is really good, And little gripes here and there. I was talking about Ermac and all that, and that stuff feels like a little contrived, like we just kind of bump into them and all that, but I was really enjoying it. I was feeling it. I'm like, okay, where's the story going? I want to see where these characters go. I like this plot with this kind of Shang Tsung who should have been a loser, Liu Kang remade, because it's always these fucking sorcerers, man. You just don't let them... You just gotta stomp them while they're down. When Liu Kang remade the universe, he made it so that he put things in motion so that Quan Chi and Shang Tsung had kind of loser lives. And they would never really get anywhere or learn any sort of real sorcery. But then, some mysterious figure has entered the picture. And she is definitely not Kronika. And she's trying to... She's giving them new powers and setting them on course. You're like, okay, what's going on here? So you've got Quan Chi and Shang Tsung teaming up, and I'm like, oh, it's like the Deadly Alliance. We got a little nod to the Deadly Alliance. Like, things that shouldn't have been, but now they're getting pushed in that direction. And then you hit like the halfway point. And something happens. Something happens. There's betrayals, there's all this, there's, Sub-Zero betrays the guys, which is like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's Bi-Han, he's an asshole. He's gonna make robots. Because he's so cold. We're gonna get Cyber Sub-Zero back. And all the heroes confront Shang Tsung. And Shang Tsung's like, yes, I am going to resurrect the Dragon King's army. Oh, like Deadly Alliance again. All right, we're just doing that game again. But okay, we're sort of, hinting at it, and we're echoing it. And then he says, Liu Kang's like, who is this mysterious person who's been setting you on this course? And Shang Tsung is like, I have my benefactor. Their name is Damashi. And I'm like, oh, because so in Mortal Kombat Deception, which comes after Deadly Alliance, the whole story mode of that game is about Shujinko collecting all the magical MacGuffins to stop the Dragon King from resurrecting Onaga. And then, oops, surprise, surprise, you fucking idiot. The spirit that you were doing all this for, Damashi, was actually Onaga in disguise. Woo, 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 what? So That's the deception. That's the Mortal Kombat deception in the title. So when Shang Tsung says my benefactor is Damashi, you're like, okay, we're doing deception, because it turns out Damashi shows up, and it's just kind of like a weird reference, because then it's like, I'm actually not Chronica, I'm actually Shang Tsung from the previous timeline. And I was like, okay, which is like weird in retrospect, because Garrus and Liu Kang are like trying to figure out who this mysterious person is, this Damashi person. They don't even know the name, but they can't like get a face or anything. And Liu Kang suspects Chronica, and Garrus is like, no, I can't even see the face. We can't be sure. So like, why did Shang Tsung, old timeline Shang Tsung, why did he disguise himself if they weren't even able to see him? What's the point of the disguise reveal? It's entirely for the audience and not the characters. And it's so weird, because it would have made sense for them to suspect Chronica had survived, or like a shard of her or something like that. Or at least like been confused as to how she survived. It's really weird that they didn't do that plot point to then have the reveal that it was Shang Tsung, which, like, if they explained that it was Chronica, that would have made the reveal that it was Shang Tsung probably more potent. Well, anyway, Shang Tsung's back from the previous timeline, and it turns out that these two... okay, the reasons... This would have been really lame, but I'm willing to give it a pass, because it was set up in the last game. At the end of Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath, the DLC, Liu Kang and Shang Tsung have this big fight over who's going to become the new God of Time, or the Titan of Time. And in that final battle, you get to choose who you're going to play as, which means that you get to choose for either Liu Kang or Shang Tsung to win. Now, it seemed like the canonical ending was that Liu Kang won, and that's why he's the god of... Well, former god of time. Now, he gave those powers up to become just the god of fire. And then... but like, okay, so I guess that's the canonical one. No, as they set up, there is a separate timeline where Shang Tsung won the fight, and he remade his own universe. Okay, that at least makes sense. And when they say that, like, oh, there shouldn't be any other timelines, but there is another one, it's like, oh, it's because they had this big god battle in this very particular place, this, like, realm outside of time, Chronica's realm, with, you know, over this crown that could control time. I can at least believe, on silly fantasy story logic, that this would create some kind of big split. If you want to say, oh, that created ripples in time that created a second timeline, you know? I can believe that time got weird and the events that really happened, you know, there is no really happened. It's multiple things could have happened. That all I can justify. And I'm also okay with this because it's, at least for now, about keeping... How do I say this? It's about, like, dealing with the vestigial remains of the previous timeline. Like, we're gonna fight it and we're gonna stomp it out. Okay. It's not too much for me personally yet. So stuff happens, and it's like, okay, Shang Tsung is going to open up these portals to get, like, an army from another universe, from his own timeline, because he wants to conquer Liu Kang's now that he knows about it, because he's just spiteful like that. Okay, that seems like a Shang Tsung thing to do. He's always been like an underhanded conqueror kind of guy. Kind of a Rasputin type. The Rasputin wasn't like a conqueror. You know what I mean. So there's this whole deal with like, I don't know if we can defeat the big Shang Tsung army. Now remember when I said 50% mark? After that reveal, things start to get a little weird. So might be like the 60% mark, to be honest. I'm not sure exactly when in the story mode it happens, at what hour that reveal happens. But after that, stuff starts to get wonky. And it okay, so there's some weird shit with okay, there's like evil versions of characters. Okay, fine. It's kind of like the Revenant characters or whatever. Okay, you got evil versions of the Mortal Kombat characters. But it's like, okay, Sindel, there's Dark Raiden from MK11, and he's like the only one who looks like his old version, but alright, fine. Brain blanking right now. You're like, okay, you're fighting those guys, and then what point does it happen? Okay, well, there's a little weird footnote. So, okay, Ermac, right? He's like a goon for Quan Chi. And then at one point, Melina fights Ermac and punches him a lot. And then Ermac becomes Jared? It's really weird because Jared's soul, Melina's father, Jared's soul was in the forest, so it's like inside of Ermac, and for some reason, beating him up let Jared come to the surface to the point where he can control the body, and like the face changes, and what? And I remember like, that was the point I remember seeing people in like the stream chat going, this is weird. It's kind of strange. So then Sindel dies because Katana and Melina can never have both parents. They can't be happy. But like Jared's still there. And like eventually, like it's fucking like Sindel's soul also goes into Ermac. So they're both in the body. And I don't like this is weird. I kind of wish Melina had just been left to fend for herself. That seems like a more interesting struggle for the character. I don't like Ermac being a guy. I don't like him being one person. I like him being the collective, right? I emphasize that a lot when I talked about his designs. I like it when he's a collective. In any event, yeah, that stuff's weird, but it's not like the biggest deal in the world. Then there's a scene where all the characters are teamed up, including Shang Tsung and Quan Chi and Shang Chuk and Kinhwa and all that shit. All those people and Shuba Duba. All these characters. And I'm like, alright, okay, everyone, we're uniting everyone. We're bringing everyone together. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm cool with that. Then they're like, uh-oh, I don't know if we can defeat Shang Tsung's whole army from the other universe. And then someone suggests, hey, Liu Kang, you know how Shang Tsung is getting a whole army of people from the alternate dimension? What if we did that? And I was like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean? What if we... I'm like, okay, you mean like collecting everyone together from this universe, right, to fight the other one, right? No. Because in the last, like, third of the story, we jump hard into a multiversal arms race. And it is... Okay. So Liu Kang is like, I gotta go get my time powers back. So we go back to the temple. But then, Shang Tsung is attacking. And... No, wait, hang on. It was before that. He gets his time powers back. Then he's like, let me look through the realms. And he gets an alternate version of Katana, and they have a kissy kiss, and it's like, wait, no, that's not like, they're like, oh, then you're the same Katana. And it's like, no, she's not the same. She is by definition from a different timeline. And then we cut, and he's standing with like old Raiden and different Kung Lao and some other person probably. And I'm like, okay, guys, we need to hit the brakes right now. Like, this is a little much, right? And then Shang Tsung appears, and he opens a bunch of portals, and a bunch of evil versions of characters come out, and we gotta fight them. And at one point, he's trying to destroy the hourglass, because now he knows that there's like infinite timelines, so he's just gonna destroy this one for whatever reason. I guess just spite. So at one point, there's like a dozen characters all shooting laser beams out of their hands into an hourglass, and I was like, okay, this is too much. We need to cut this off right now. There's still time to salvage the story and get us back on track to what was interesting and emotional about it, and stop going this far to the edge, right? But we got to stop right here. Okay? So we beat all those people. And then we cut to Liu Kang opening a portal, walking out of the portal. And it's this upside down overhead shot that spins around and pans. And you see a big ass pyramid. And I said, no. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. And Liu Kang is standing there with like 1,000 alternate universe versions of every Mortal Kombat character. And he's like, Shang Tsung, this is your chance to stop, or, something. And I'm like, okay, no, fuck, please don't go. Please don't do this. We're already too far. We're far. I could see like the boat is sinking, and we're not plugging up the holes, dude. The holes are too big. And Shang Tsung steps up, and he's from at the top of the pyramid, and he goes, ah ha ha, Liu Kang. And then he waves his hand, and a giant portal opens up, and and 1,000 evil versions of the Mortal Kombat characters come out of the portal, and then everyone runs at each other up and down the pyramid in a big action figure fuck orgy. And I was shocked. I was speechless. I didn't even know what to feel. I don't think I have ever seen a story. It's not even lose. It's like jettison from space. Its emotional core so hard. Just so hard. Remember a few hours ago when Johnny Cage and Kenshi, when Johnny gave him the sword because he'd gained a little bit of respect for him, and he realized that his ego was maybe, it wasn't fulfilling for him. He didn't feel morally okay with being that egotistical, at least in that one moment. And he changed a little bit. Do you remember a few hours ago? The really weird thing actually comes a little earlier, when there's a bunch of characters fighting at this like other portal thing to stop the army from coming through or something. I don't even know where the fucking pyramid is. Where does that even happen? What is that location? Because there's this place with all these other portals, and there's this weird thing where Shang Tsung and Quan Chi fight some like alternate, they find out like, alternate evil version Shao Kahn, his life force is like keeping the portals up, so they just kill him, like they fucking zap him after like Raiden gets, I think, beat by him or something like that, and they fucking they crush his head, they do something brutal, and Raiden's like, nice. And that was really weird to me. That was like, remember a few hours ago when Raiden was meek farm boy who wasn't ready to take on the responsibility of being Earthrealm's representative, their champion, when he was a little precocious about getting the gauntlet that would give him the talisman that gave him the power over lightning, and he was beginning to accept his responsibility in a tournament where explicitly the combatants don't die. You know, it's not to the death anymore. Well, now he just saw someone get his fucking head crushed, and he's like, that's kind of sick the way you did that, dude. I'm actually really into that. That was super bizarre. And that was like a moment, that was like, I feel like where the drift really started. Where, dude, by the time this fucking nonsense at the pyramid happens, I don't think we've seen Kung Lao, like our Kung Lao, the actual Kung Lao, for like 4 hours. I don't think Johnny Cage or Kenshi have been seen in that time either. Have they had a line? Oh, sorry, there's one line where Johnny uses his drone, which was set up at the beginning of the story. But like, just completely dropped. Are they to the like where they aren't the main characters anymore of this story? And I get that like the overarching story of all the games is like Liu Kang and now he's the god of fire and shit. But like, I don't care about him as much as I do the other characters. At least here in this context. And it's so bizarre. It's just, I was watching it the whole time, and it's just this completely hollow, emotionless thing. Which is weird, because there's like some fun stuff in there. There's some fun ideas on paper. Like all these alternate versions of characters that are like fused and combined. Where it's like Scorpion and Kung Lao, and he's called Stung Lao, or Garrus and Reptile, and he's called Clockadile. Like, I like that in its own thing, in its own little area, but we never see like what the actual main character, those 4 characters, are doing, or what their reactions are. Are they even in the crowd? Like, I can't even tell. You can play as them if you want, but if you're playing as certain characters, like, you get the selection of the whole roster, but if you're playing as certain characters who aren't supposed to be there, or who, like, if you play as Liu Kang, for instance, it's not the actual Liu Kang, you're playing as an alternate version of Liu Kang. You go through this whole gauntlet, and you're not even playing as the real Liu Kang. You're some alternate version. And it's like, man, I'm watching the craziest shit ever that in a different context would be really fun and enjoyable, but I feel absolutely nothing besides just kind of remorse at the dying embers of a story that I wonder why it was even told in the first place. Why did we have to do Armageddon again? Why did we have to do... You know, when Mortal Kombat Armageddon came out, that was the 7th game in the series of a continuous ongoing story and timeline. That was the 7th game, and it had every single character in the series up to that point in it. All of them. And the ones that didn't exist before in the 3D style, because there was a lot of asset reuse in that, were made wholesale. Were made fresh. You know, Fujin, Striker, bunch of random characters. It had meat. Like weird little fun homage kind of in-joke characters, honestly. It had mocap. It had everyone in it. This is doing Armageddon again, except with one game of setup for the world? and the main characters, quote unquote, and also like a quarter of the roster. And it's so weak. It's so weak. It feels so fucking lame. Just, man. I can't think of something that just devolves so hard into utter schlock. Just absolute, man. This is just garbage. And it's disappointing because it wasn't like the story was meh, and then this is like the only fun thing that's happened, right? No, the story up to that point had been pretty good, all things considered. I think if they just reined it in a little bit, just a little, had a little bit of self-control, and they just be like, okay, we gotta fight the alternate evil versions of these characters, but it's not gonna be, it's just an excuse to, you know, have some characters to fight, because we aren't gonna be splitting up the characters into like this faction versus this faction or anything like that. And then, you know, we're gonna, so everyone's gonna have like an evil counterpart or two to fight against, and it's gonna be room for, like, we're gonna get some it's gonna be like a battle, but there's gonna be some personal level to it. It's gonna be a little more on the ground. There's gonna be some character development during it. I think it could have been fine. I think it could have actually brought it home with, you know, okay, we're going a little bit, we're pushing it a little bit, but I think that would have been solid. I think it would have been fine. This was just, man, so fucking lame. And then, like, they beat them, I guess, and then it's over, I suppose. And then you get this scene with, to wrap up the story, in like a pub or like the tavern from the beginning of the game. And it's those four main characters, and they're sitting around with Liu Kang, and they're having this dialogue scene, and it's like, man, in isolation, this is a really nice scene. The dialogue is good, the performances are good. It's very sweet. It's kind of wholesome, and it's a nice way to wrap up the story. But the whole time I was watching it, I couldn't feel any of that. These characters who I'd actually felt something for before, I couldn't feel any of that, because the only thing I was thinking was, fuck you for trying to pretend to be a real story after that. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. You don't get to do this. You didn't earn this. You earned it, and then you gave it up. You forsook it. You completely botched deserving this kind of emotional catharsis. To have some fucking weird nonsense where we're redoing MK Armageddon, which I don't know if anyone actually wanted. Oh, we got to do all the 3D games in one game. Except that's very different from doing the original trilogy in one game, like MK9 did. Because the original trilogy is like, yeah, it is a lot to pack into a single game, but at least has like a beginning, middle, and end. The 3D era is like, the escalation is so insane by the end that it's like, you need a little build-up if like the next game was Armageddon. Or there was like a bunch of DLC. If this game was a game that they were going to support for a really long time, and they were eventually going to DLC like the whole Mortal Kombat history in there. Are there any new characters in this game? No. No, there is 0 new characters in this game. That's really interesting. I never thought about that before. There are absolutely no new characters on the roster. Everyone is returning. That feels like almost like what they wanted to do. Like, have a couple seasons of DLC, add in at least a good chunk of the cast in terms of either main roster or cameo fighters, and then do like the DLC thing like with Aftermath, but it's like MK1 Armageddon, and that's like the end. Why did it have to be so absurdly rushed? It's weird. It's weird and really disappointing. And I don't know if I'd be... At one point in my viewing experience, I really cared about the world and the characters. And now, I don't know if I really care to see them again. it's kind of been sort of tanked for me. And that's unfortunate. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Do I have anything else about the story? I don't know, man. Just very bummer. Just a real bummer.